Ooh, yeah, yeah. This needs to be said all the while. We're keeping it real, yes. There's so much to be said.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on This Needs to Be Said. I have a special guest with us today, Miss Anna Poon. She has become a fast friend of mine because we have so much of the same qualities of wanting to help the community. So anybody who wants to help others, help the community, we're already friends. So Anna is from Hong Kong. She's lived in the United States for a while. I believe she's been here since 2003. She'll let us know that when she joins us in the conversation. However, I'm looking at the affordable housing crisis in Charlotte only to find out that it is everywhere. It's not just in Charlotte. So as she's a travel agent, she's traveled around the world. She's been a police officer. She's a journalist. And she also has her own platform, Anna Poon Talks. She's been very busy, very knowledgeable, and she makes sure that she's connected with the people she needs to know to get the solutions that are needed. Anything from your price is too high in the store, can you sell this at a cheaper price as opposed to just throwing it out? She always has some solution to something that's perceived as a problem. I'll say it that way. At this time, I want to welcome Anna Poon to This Needs to Be Said. Welcome, Anna. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Kathleen. Thank you so much for such a, beautiful and lengthy introduction about me. Yes, I was a police officer in Hong Kong, and I came to the state in 1997 when China took over the city from the British rule. And then after I moved to the States, I've done a lot of a number of business with my late husband. And eventually I become a flight attendant. It used to be called stewardess, okay? Because of the name, it's the same service or same job. And we ran into each other. We talk about how to help the community. And I know that you have a lot of passion about helping the poor people or people that are not so wealthy enough to move into a house. And then we try to see, and you want to see how you can help them to get over the obstacles to until they are good enough to move into their own home or house. And we had that kind of experience in Hong Kong about, I would say, 30, 40 years ago. And that project or that idea went into really, really good. And we also talk about it because that is not the only problem that we have in Charlotte. And I also read some of the articles and news that in some other states in the United States. So we had an idea coming up that how are we going to help these people to get over just for a period of time instead of going to a shelter. You see what I mean? Some people, they're not really, really that kind of poor, they have to sleep in the street. But because financial situation, they can't keep their house. They might lose their house of business. They might lose the house of certain loss of a job, or they were not ready to move into a house after like graduation from a college. They still have big debts. So I've been traveling to many other countries as well. I just came back from Korea. And then I find that the place that I stay, like a hostel, is very similar to what we have, that kind of housing in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, we call low-cost housing. Comparatively much, much cheaper than you rent an apartment from the private landlord. But if we are going to do it in such a way that we can help people and also help the city to solve this problem.
Yes.
So that's why we came up this idea. And then and also, you know what, going to a shelter really sometimes hurts somebody's dignity, you know. I live in a shelter, you know what I mean? But they can still afford to pay a small amount of money or rent. But that is not enough for somebody who want to make a profit. It is a real,
Right.
some people, they have the rental property. They definitely need the profit, like a hotel. You can't rent a hotel room for a small fraction. But for us, I think we can do it in that way.
Yes. So we were talking, and this had to become a conversation for This Needs to Be Said, because there's lots of conversations that I have that are just among my friends. However, it needs to be a bigger conversation, because even on yesterday in our small conversation, we were talking about property lines. And even my mom, she's been in the same house for 45 years. Looking at your property line isn't something you do. When I bought my home, it wasn't something you did. They told you, you bought this piece of land. You don't go check behind them and say, let me see what they mean. Is this the right line? Where does my grass line really end? For my mom, for 45 years, she did not know that her yard was 4 feet wider than it was. So the next door neighbor, for all of these years, they've been taking care of it, but it was our property. So she didn't know that. And I don't know if she would have done anything differently or not, but she didn't even know that she could do something with the property. I live next door to someone right now. I rent my half and she owns her half of the duplex. She doesn't know where her property line is. And even if I can pull it up in a public record, which it is, she doesn't believe it, because she believes she bought something other than what I'm showing her in the public record. And she's been there 16 years. So you've been there 16 years, and in your mind, you believe that the paperwork you have reflects where you live, and it just may not. And it's more times than not that you are not quite living in the boundaries that were provided for you, but nobody said anything, so it must be okay. And so the lady next door to me for 16 years, it's been okay for her not to know what her property line was, but they happen to be looking to sell the unit I'm in and ask that we want to buy it. So I now want to know what my property line is. If I'm going to buy it, what am I getting? Well, me knowing to look for my property line now, because of so many times of not knowing, I learned my lesson the hard way. I now want to know what's my property line. Now it looks like her property line is crossing over mine. So now we have, I guess, a squabble. I don't know. But it's just a simple thing that doesn't seem difficult, but you don't know where you stand in life, whether where you physically live or how much money you have to provide for yourself. You think you're working a good job, you went to school or you got a trade and you work really hard. And that should automatically equate to you being successful. You should at least be able to live basically happy. But that isn't how the formula works. When you and I were talking yesterday, we talked about property lines. We talked about other living options. We went over to a place, I won't say the name of the place on the show, but we went over to a place that specializes in small spaces, making the most out of a small space. If you don't know that place is, you can email us and I'll tell you about it after the show. But we went to get inspiration for some ideas on what can be a proposal for people with dignity. And you said that, and I'm not saying that shelters are not a good thing. Shelters have their place. They are providing a service. But the people that we're talking about are the people I was mentioning in the beginning of the show a few weeks ago. They're too rich to be poor, and they're too poor to be rich. They aren't able to move because whatever the guidelines are on paper, they don't measure up because of a number of reasons. You named a few, but it also just could be they have a job they're working hard on, but it doesn't pay a living wage, which has come up as a conversation. Are we causing people to be in this state of limbo because somebody's not willing to pay them enough? And then when I talk to business owners, they say, well, if we pay them more, then it would impede our business. It will cause our profits to go down. And on the business side, I understand that. But if you want these people to keep coming back and not have a high turnover rate, would it be better to pay them a living wage? Something that when they leave, they may have had a bad day, but it's not because you don't pay them a living wage. So that question is still out there. Anna, I'm going to ask you this other question because as a result of us meeting up yesterday, I posted something about how many children will go back to school in the next month here, and they are displaced or homeless. They don't have an assigned space for them to live. They've gone all summer. They haven't been at school. Hopefully they've gotten, that lunch, because they're offering lunch programs here in Charlotte. Maybe they've gotten lunch. I don't know what the situation looks like for individuals who are displaced and kids aren't in school for the summer, when that's when they normally get 2 of their 3 meals, if they do get 3 meals. So the question was, or the statement was, something to think about. There are 74,000 students that are returning to the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. That's not including the charter and private schools. The statistics I have are 74,000 students will be returning to Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, and they are homeless. Now, the other number to think about is that is exactly half of the population of the students in the school. So that means we have 100 and, is it 76? Am I counting right? Let's do this, hold on. So is it 74? Actually, it's 148,000. 148,000 kids are in school, and half of their peers are homeless. So I posted it, and someone posted, oh, that's happening in Los Angeles too. And after talking with you, it's happening in Hong Kong too. So the issue isn't just my neighborhood, it's everywhere. But when I posted that, that was the response I got. Oh, that's happening in Los Angeles too. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that we let us focus in our own city.
Mm-hmm.
Then we find a plan which can help, and then eventually we just do the same thing. And maybe some other people, they want to do the same things too, but right now I think that we can find a solution in Charlotte itself. But the number you just mentioned is huge.
It is, yeah.
It's huge. But what we have discussed about yesterday, I believe that it would be a solution to many people. At least like you say, give the kids a home, okay, instead of just a shelter. It's a home to them. So in that case, it will just motivate them, make them can focus in their study. Okay, as they get, they grow up, they got educated, they will do the same thing and help other people. So in that case, as I mentioned, what we have in Hong Kong, it was similar things like that. Eventually, we don't need those low-cost housing at all. You know what the government turned it into?
What?
They sell it to them.
They sell it to the government?
No, the government. Okay, like you say. Okay, what happened is the low-cost housing is for the for example, like a couple with children. Okay, now the kids grown up.
Yes.
And they all left, just like us. Okay, my kids grown, they're all gone. They have their own place, they have their own house. So leaving the older people there, and they're so used to that community, but they are now wealthy enough to keep the place. So what happened is the government turned it into what you call the home owner scheme. Means you can own it if you pay a small fraction. Over. So they become the owner of the place. So, I mean, for the number you that mentioned, it's a long term. It's long term. We can't solve it overnight, or we cannot solve it within a year or two. It might, just like it takes kids to have at least 10 or 15 years education. So by the time they grow, it's 10 years. So I'm looking at if this project is going to be prepared, it has to be 10, 20, or even 30 years.
Yeah.
So
it does definitely have to be long term. And what I like about what we're working on, and yes, we are not going to give you all of the details. We will let you know where we need help and what we're working on, because we don't have all the details hammered out. But our heart is with any of us who find ourselves in a situation not being able to afford. And what we can learn through this community are some things to prepare for the future, things we are behind. For those who don't know how to overcome the obstacles, or they've tried their best and still yet ran out of resources and found themselves in this predicament, you have your pride. You have, I shouldn't be in this space because I tried really hard. I worked hard. I did my best. I was good to people. All of those things are, you know, good people, but bad things happen to good people, which could, somebody looks and says, oh, they're homeless because they chose to be homeless. They're homeless because they didn't do the right things. They did something wrong to put themselves in that position. And if you know anybody, you know that we don't often put ourselves in those situations. There are times that we do, but it's not often. It's probably this person believed they did their best. So this is what we're talking about overall. We don't have the plan. We don't have the building yet to take in these people. And I say the statistics only because it sounds crazy when I hear them. If you took the statistics and you know that there are 34,000 households that need somebody, which means if the average household is 3 people, that's 3 times 34,000. That's the number of people that don't have a home of their own. They may be living with family, but if you've ever lived with family, not vacation, but if you've ever lived with family, you know one day it gets uncomfortable because they want you out of their space or you want out of their space, and you really can't move like you want to because it's not your place, and you got your rules, and if you have kids, you got rules for your kids. So it's a whole bunch of layers, and it's a lot of chaos. And it's not peace because you have to answer to someone. The kids see you answering to someone. They got to answer to everyone, and they don't have their own stuff. You can't touch your cousin's things. You can't ride your cousin's bike. You can't sleep on your cousin's bed. You know what I'm saying? So it to me, when you brought up that they're going to have their own place, that does build confidence. It doesn't automatically make kids smart, but it does give them peace of mind. They have a better chance of doing better. And yes, we're thinking of practical. We're not thinking of luxury. So when we get to the end of this idea, we know we're going to have to get people to buy into this adjusted idea of having a basic living that you can provide for your family, provide for yourself, and actually be a part of a community that wants to see you thrive.
Necessity. You know,
Say it
we
again?
just want to provide the basic necessity.
Yes, because that's what's missing right now.
Yeah.
And when you're able to do better, you're not locked in to stay with us. We're talking about a 30-year plan because we know that some people will need that time, or this may be the groove that they can live in. They say, I can do this. I can manage this. This works for me. So we're not doing something that's going to go away in 2 seconds or in a year. But if it ever does have to go away, like what happened in Hong Kong, we can definitely repurpose it to another group that needs something. But where we are right now is we want to help the working class. Anna, I want to take a turn in the conversation here, but before I do that, I want to know if you had anything that you wanted to add to what I was saying.
Well, right now, I think our thoughts are in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, we need more like contribution into the how much space we need, budget, how we going to how many people that we can help to start with.
Yeah.
And then once we started that, we just do the same thing, duplicate.
Yes. Yes.
And then also, you know what? In that case, we also create jobs.
Yeah, you do. You do.
We create a lot of jobs to help other people. That's the most important thing to me.
Well, I think for people who are going to be looking for work, they are definitely having trouble finding a place to live. So I think that is very important. It gives a person a purpose. And if we are in this community mentality, their contribution to the community, they'll be able to actually see it. What we're also hoping to do with this is not to get hung up into government subsidies, because here's another statistic. There are 13,000 households on a waiting list waiting for housing subsidy. Now, I don't know if those people, if that's an accurate number, if they're still waiting, if they have been waiting and now their kids are grown and they can live somewhere cheaper or roommate with somebody. I don't know how real this number is, but if this number is real, there are 13,000 households that are waiting for a subsidy. We want to help people without having to have a subsidy. What can you do with what you have? And we want to show people what you can do with what you have. It's not going to be a traditional method because the traditional methods aren't working. We don't fit into those traditional methods. We don't make 4 times the monthly income gross. You know what I'm saying? So all of the things that are keeping you out, all of the barriers that are keeping you out, whether you're a senior citizen, disabled, disabled vet, whether you are a family, a working class family that can't afford, or even a single parent home. That's at least 5 categories. And I'm sure we can make more lists of people who need. You got single people who can't find a space just for themselves. So that's 6 categories. So we want to be able to help this community of people. This is a diverse community of people that have a similar problem. I don't have my basic needs met. And that's what we want to help do. Anna, we have a few minutes left today. I know we're going to need to come back in another episode and talk some more about our ideas about housing. But this, I think, lays the foundation that we're thinking solution and not just talking problem, because the first 3 episodes I did talk problem and I was raising the question. Before we get out of here today, do you want to, or this segment, do you want to share any closing remarks? Because we're going to continue this conversation in the next episode.
Well, we would like to have more people that, if they are willing to help, to join us. Just give us a text message if they have idea that they want to help. Because like I said, we always want to help other people, but we just don't want people they are just taking. Okay, we're sure that there are people that they can give as well, but not the kind of people that, the whole country has been talking about other people just taking, but we are also creating people that they are ready to give as well.
Yes.
So it's not just taking, but these people, they will take and they will give.
Yes, and that's how it should be. If it's too much giving or too much taking, that's an imbalance on either side. Anna Poon, thank you so much. I love your name. My family doesn't know you by Anna. I was talking to my mom yesterday after I left with you, and I said, I was talking with Anna, and she said, who? I said, Anna Poon. She said, oh, okay. I always say your name together. I never say it by itself. So anyway, Anna Poon, thank you so much for joining me today on This Needs to Be Said to begin the conversation about possible solutions for this housing crisis that apparently is around the world. And I do appreciate that. As we're closing, I want to put another statistic or another note in people's mind. In 1938, minimum wage was created to be a living wage. It was created to cover basic needs so every person could have a basic standard of living. Now, a lot has changed since 1938. The minimum wage has not kept up with the cost of living and has definitely not maintained the status of being a standard of living, basic standard of living wage. And I don't know if I want to argue with the government to say, hey, give people a living wage, because I've also been introduced to another thought process that there are individuals in the capitalist world says, leave the government out of it. Let us charge what we want. Let us pay people what we want. But the problem with trusting that thought is that you're not willing to pay a living wage either. The government isn't enforcing it. You left independent. You could do a little bit more than $7.25 an hour, but you don't. You do $8.25 or $9.25. So people are still left with your free market thinking, but they're not able to make more money unless they just never go home. Then they won't need a home, huh? Maybe that would solve the solution. Let's be the solution. Everybody just work, never go home. That's not a good solution. So we're trying to come in as a third solution. While there is the free market, free enterprise, and there is the government, there are people that would have the most pride knowing that they can support their families on their own strength. And we want to create a way that's possible for that to happen. And I want to say thank you again. Thank you, TV audience, so much for joining us. We did this Zoom meeting. We're going to do some more of these and make it where we're not having any time lapse in between sharing information with you. So thank you, the audience, for joining us as well. And until next time, have a super day.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Waddell. I am the host of This Needs to Be Said. There's an elephant in the room. We're going to talk about it. As you see my sign, cast your vote, your opinion here. We want to hear what you have to say, and we have been listening. Also, we realize that regular news doesn't always get to the bottom of a topic like affordable housing or food deserts or internet deserts. What does that mean? Tune in, and we will share that information with you.
This needs to be said. All the while we're keeping it real, yes. There's so much to be